From the Toronto studios, this is Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight. At least 23 journalists have been killed since Israel declared war on Gaza on October 7th. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists reports that those in Gaza are particularly at risk as they try to cover the conflict amid devastating Israeli airstrikes. The committee has confirmed 23 deaths, including 19 Palestinian, 3 Israeli, and 1 Lebanese. 8 journalists have been injured, and 3 are missing or have been detained. The latest victim is Palestinian journalist Rushdie Siraj, who was killed in Israeli attacks. Speaking to Anadolu news agency, Siraj's wife, Shurq al-El, said her husband was killed in an Israeli attack on the Tel al-Ahwa neighborhood in Gaza. Most of the other journalists were killed by Israeli airstrikes while covering the war. Israel's government has passed new regulations to halt foreign news broadcasts during times of emergency. Under the regulations, outlets like Al Jazeera could face suspension during the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict based on government assessments that they pose a threat. Al Jazeera previously has accused Israel of attempting to silence the media by targeting journalists. The Committee to Protect Journalists is urging Israel not to close Al Jazeera, raising concerns about press freedom. In a single night, 436 Palestinians, including 182 children, were killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the death toll in the besieged enclave has now exceeded 5,000. Israel has killed 2,000 Palestinian children in 17 days of relentless bombardment. Rescue efforts are severely hampered, and more than 1,500 people, including 830 children, are believed to be trapped under rubble, with their fate hanging in the balance as aid and resources are in very short supply. The devastation goes beyond the loss of people, as infrastructure is also crippled. Israeli airstrikes have devastated residential areas and key facilities. The United Nations says about 100 shipments of aid are needed daily to supply the 2.3 million residents, a stark contrast to the 34 trucks that arrived last weekend. Israel has detained thousands of Palestinians in the 2 weeks since its bombing and siege of Gaza. Before October 7th, when Hamas launched an attack on Israel, roughly 5,200 Palestinians were in Israeli prisons. According to Palestinian sources, the number of prisoners has since risen to more than 10,000. In the past 2 weeks, authorities and human rights groups say Israel has detained about 4,000 Gazan workers in Israel. Separately, over 1,000 more Palestinians were arrested in overnight army raids in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. Head of Ramallah-based prisoners' rights group Adamir Sahar Francis says most of the people from Gaza are being held in a military base in the southern Nakab Desert. A supporter of Israel drove his car into a pro-Palestine rally and opened fire on peaceful demonstrators marching through the streets of Minneapolis on Sunday. Several witnesses reported a vehicle driving through the crowd, and one person reported the sound of a gunshot. Police say injuries were reported and no victims came forward. They are conducting further investigation, but no arrests have been made so far. The Minnesota Anti-War Committee says another protest is planned for Wednesday afternoon outside of Representative Betty McCollum's office in St. Paul. Detroit police say they have found no evidence to suggest the death of a synagogue president was linked to anti-Semitism. Samantha Wool, president of the Isaac Agree downtown synagogue, was found fatally stabbed outside her home. Detroit Police Chief James White stressed the importance of not jumping to conclusions and that no evidence of anti-Semitism had surfaced thus far. Wool was known as a friend of Muslims because of her interfaith work and her support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel praised Wool's unwavering support and active involvement in various events. Western leaders back Israel's right to self-defense. Details of the stories come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Leaders of the US, the UK, France, Canada, and Italy extended support for Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas. In a joint statement on Sunday, they, however, urged the Jewish state to uphold international humanitarian laws and protect civilians. The statement was released after a call initiated by leaders of the 5 countries, who also welcomed the release of 2 American hostages by Hamas and urged the immediate release of all remaining hostages. They pledged to closely coordinate efforts to support their nationals in the region, especially those seeking to leave Gaza. The leaders also appreciated Israel's permission to allow a very limited number of humanitarian convoys to assist Palestinians in Gaza. Canada, which did not join the earlier joint statement, signed on to this latest effort. Israeli settlers on Sunday forced their way into the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex in the occupied East Jerusalem. While Israel's airstrikes on Gaza continued uninterrupted, about 200 fanatical Jewish settlers raided Masjid al-Aqsa and performed various religious rituals. Al-Aqsa Mosque is under the administration of the Jordan-affiliated Islamic Waqf. For years, Israeli far-right groups advocating for Jewish control over Al-Aqsa have been raiding Al-Aqsa with full support from occupying Israeli military. Hamas claims that its October 7th attack on Israel was motivated by these provocations by Israeli settlers. Prayers were held for victims of Israeli airstrikes in Gaza at the Church of the Resurrection, or Church of the Holy Sepulchre, in Jerusalem on Sunday. The church is one of the most holy and special sites in Christianity and has been a major pilgrimage center for Christians worldwide. Christians believe this church is to be the site of the crucifixion and the tomb of Jesus. Israeli airstrikes have hit 31 mosques and 3 churches in the past 2 weeks. Last week, they destroyed the Greek Orthodox Porphyrius Church in Gaza City and killed more than a dozen people, wounding many others. Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson Ashraf Qudra says at least 16 Palestinian Christians were amongst those killed in direct Israeli attacks on the church. The Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Jerusalem said targeting churches and its affiliated institutions, in addition to the shelters they provide to protect innocent citizens, constitutes a war crime that cannot be ignored. Hundreds of thousands of people around the world gathered for rallies in support of Palestine and calling for a ceasefire. Thousands in Paris gathered on Sunday in the first pro-Palestinian demonstration allowed by police since October 7th. Similar protests were held in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Nigeria, South Africa, and Serbia. In Berlin, demonstrators gathered at Alexander Square in the German capital on Sunday to show solidarity with the Palestinians. After the demonstration, they joined the Isha prayer in the square. Thousands of people also rallied in Brussels in support of Palestine on Sunday, according to local media reports. In Rotterdam, Netherlands, thousands of demonstrators gathered at the Binnenhof Square on Sunday to show support for Palestine and condemn the Israeli occupation. Thousands of people also joined a pro-Palestine march in Copenhagen, Denmark on Sunday, calling for an end to Israeli strikes on Gaza City. Similarly, in the Swedish capital, Stockholm, thousands gathered the same day to support Palestinians and condemn the Israeli occupation. Muslims in Nigeria came together Sunday in the capital Lagos to organize a demonstration to support Palestine. A pro-Palestine rally was held in Cape Town, South Africa on Sunday amid ongoing Israeli bombardment of Gaza. Meanwhile, in Serbia, demonstrators took to the streets of the capital Belgrade in support of and solidarity with Palestine on Sunday. Pakistan's 3-time former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif returned to his homeland after nearly 4 years in self-imposed exile in London. He arrived in the capital Islamabad and addressed thousands of supporters in Lahore, where he kick-started his party's campaign for the upcoming elections. Sharif pledged to tackle the country's record inflation and expressed his desire to serve the nation and promote its prosperity. Sharif's legal team intends to appeal his previous convictions that prevent him from running for public office. Sharif's return to Pakistan follows legal developments granting him protection in graft cases. His career has been marked by numerous arrests, convictions, and periods of exile. Expats say Sharif's return potentially signals a thaw in his relationship with the military establishment. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed concern over India's decision to expel 41 Canadian diplomats. He says the move will have a significant impact on millions of people and ties with India. Trudeau emphasized the challenges faced by those traveling between the two countries for various purposes, including education, family visits, weddings, and businesses. The expulsion of Canadian diplomats became inevitable after India threatened to revoke their diplomatic immunity. It led to the evacuation of 41 diplomats and 42 dependents from India. Canada hosts a substantial Indian diaspora, with about 1.3 million people of Indian heritage. As of September, around 320,000 Indian students were studying in Canada. The expulsion of Canadian diplomats stems from Trudeau's public allegation that the Indian government was involved in the June assassination of Canadian Sikh Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia. Australia's spy chief Mike Burgess expressed support for Canada's allegations against India regarding the Sikh leader's killing. India has denied the allegations and says its relationship with Canada is going through a difficult phase. India's Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has expressed concerns about interference in India's internal affairs by Canadian diplomats. A New York judge overseeing the $250 million civil fraud trial of Donald Trump on Friday threatened to send the former president to prison for violating a gag order in the case. Judge Arthur N. Goron threatened to hold the ex-president in contempt of his October 3rd order, which required him to delete a social media post made on the second day of the trial. The gag order also barred Trump from making any personal attacks on members of Ngoron's staff. The online post in question refers to the former president, implying that Ngoron's judicial clerk had an inappropriate relationship with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York. Schumer's staff says he did not know the clerk and denied the claim, calling it pathetic, ridiculous, absurd, and false. The judge says the post remained on Trump's 2024 campaign website for 17 days until it was removed late Thursday night after the court emailed him about the violation. Trump's defense attorney Chris Keese says Trump has never made any more comments about court staff, but it appears no one took it down on the campaign website. He apologized on behalf of Trump. The judge said Trump is responsible for any messages that appear on his campaign website. In a ruling that allowed the trial to proceed, Ngoron said that Trump lied to banks and insurers by both overvaluing and undervaluing his assets. This amounted to billions of dollars of price fluctuations over the years. Trump also faces a partial gag order in the election interference case, one of the 4 criminal cases against him. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.